I showed Terminator 2 to my 12-year-old daughter. She had never seen it, and she has grown up in a world where movies can put practically anything on the screen digitally. When it was over, I asked whether a movie made 35 years ago still held up. And she said, newer movies look newer, brighter, and sharper, but this one still felt completely believable. And that's a pretty interesting answer because the groundbreaking CGI that made Terminator 2 famous accounts for roughly 5 minutes of a 137-minute movie. So what exactly was she believing for the other 132 minutes? Hi, I'm Matthew Lawrence. I've been a filmmaker and editor for over 30 years. Welcome to The Rough Cut. The first answer is momentum. Terminator 2 is one giant chase. The T-1000 disappears just long enough for the movie to breathe, and then there he is again. At one point, my daughter just said, "Oh my God, this guy again?" And that is exactly what Cameron wants you to feel. This thing is never going to stop. Making the T-1000 a police officer is also a brilliant shortcut. The uniform gives him access before the liquid metal gives him anything else. So Cameron never has to explain how he keeps finding them. The sound helps sell it too. I had just watched The Thing from 1982 where parts of the sound design felt dated. 9 years later, Terminator 2 already sounds modern. The mix gives everything weight. After the Cyberdyne escape, my daughter predicted the T-1000 would return. She knew the beat before Cameron got there, and she was still glued to it. By 1991, Arnold was a cultural icon. Turning the first movie's monster into John's protector gives their relationship an emotional head start and makes the machine the center of this one. But before that ending can work, you have to believe that machine is physically there. That physical belief is the story of the effects. Cameron puts something real in front of the camera whenever he can. The opening titles use real flame, throwing real light back into the lens. The blade through the milk carton and into the foster father's head is quick and brutal because it occupies the same physical space as the actors. But here's the honest part. I can still see the seams. Cameron photographs things much brighter than Ridley Scott. I can see the miniatures in the nuclear explosion. Some bodies read as dummies, and some rear projection feels like a soundstage. None of that ruins the movie. The physical world has enough weight that you accept it. The real limitation is motion. Once an object is attached to wires or a rig, you can feel the mechanism forcing it to move. The material is real, the physics gives it away. That's the practical ceiling Cameron was pushing against. He could build almost anything, crash it, or burn it. He could not photograph metal that moved like liquid. For that, he needed the 5 minutes that everyone remembers. 5 minutes divided into the 137-minute theatrical cut is about 3.6%. Most of those 5 minutes belong to the T-1000, a character that could not exist without CGI. Cameron still does not ask the computer, though, to do everything. Robert Patrick supplies the performance. Stan Winston's team handles the physical effects, and ILM takes over when the metal has to flow or transform. The story puts boundaries around the technology. Do all of those shots hold up perfectly? Well, not really. But liquid metal is supposed to look unnatural, and Cameron gets back to Robert Patrick quickly. The irony is that the movie warns us about technology moving faster than our judgment. Miles Dyson becomes consumed by what he can build, asking whether he could without stopping to ask whether he should. 35 years into the explosion of artificial intelligence, well, that question feels much less like science fiction. Cameron shows remarkable restraint with the new technology. With the size of the action, though, restraint is not really his thing. Cameron thinks in escalation. Every time the chase returns, it has to be bigger. And that is what I mean by Cameron's Michael Bay side. At Cyberdyne, the T-1000 rides a motorcycle up an office stairwell, launches through a window, and transfers onto a helicopter in midair. It is ridiculous. It is also fantastic. Knowing True Lies so well, I see the same action vocabulary here. 3 years later, Cameron returned to those instincts with bigger toys. That's the difference between Cameron and Ridley Scott. Scott builds a frame and asks you to sit inside it. Cameron builds the frame around whatever happens next. You always know where you are. That clarity is one of Cameron's greatest strengths, but it can also be a limitation. He keeps the emotion obvious and rarely lets the audience sit in uncertainty. You're not being asked to study the movie, you're being taken for a ride. And it is a great ride. My daughter saw the formula coming and she still loved it. But Hollywood copied Cameron's escalation much more readily than it copied his restraint with technology. My verdict is simple. Terminator 2 is a great movie. Some effects show their age, and the formula is easier to see. But as blockbuster entertainment, this thing is a roller coaster. My daughter predicted its moves and still believed every one of them. The ending makes it more than an effects movie. John begins by treating the Terminator like a toy. By the end, the monster has become a protector and almost a father, and John has to let him go. It is sentimental, it is completely Cameron, and it works. Except for one thing that bothered me in 1991, and it still does. The Terminator's left arm is torn off inside the machinery. The movie then destroys every remaining piece of future technology, including the Terminator himself. Meanwhile, this other arm is still sitting back there in the gears. The official novelization has John retrieve the arm afterward. The theatrical movie never shows it or mentions it. Maybe an arm without the chip cannot recreate Skynet, but Cyberdyne advanced by studying future technology, so another Terminator arm feels significant. It does not ruin the ending, but it leaves the door cracked open exactly when the movie wants us to believe it is finally closed. I'm Matthew Lawrence. This has been The Rough Cut, a filmmaker's perspective with no apologies. Does the abandoned arm count as a plot hole if the novelization has to fix it, or do you assume John went back for it after the movie ended? If you made it this far, drop something in the comments. I genuinely want to know. If this is the kind of breakdown you came for, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the edit room.